All right, we should be live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Prospero.ai stock market live streams. Oh my gosh, Mario, hi, listening from the beach in Ziotwanejo. Where is that, Mario? Lucky you, tuning in from the beach today. Good for you. I hope you're enjoying your beach day. Where is that in the world? It looks somewhere exotic, but welcome back in here, everybody. The markets are mostly up today. We have the QQQ up 0.5%, SPY just teetering in the green. The Dow is actually slightly red, and the Russell is down over 0.5% today. We have a lot of great stories we're going to be getting into. So, as everybody rolls on into the streams, let's like the video on Twitter, on YouTube if you enjoy the streams, if you're a regular viewer, and if you're excited for today's topics. It is a pivotal moment in markets. We've rallied aggressively off the lows, and now the Prospero signals are looking a little bit more dicey. And Mario, you're in Mexico. There you go. Well, I hope you're enjoying your beach day. Nothing better than some amazing views and scenery and the Prospero live streams, right? But thank you, Mario, for still watching, even though you're on the beach. That's pretty cool. So, like I was saying, for SPY net option sentiment, it's now below the 40 bull line. So it dipped just below. It's currently at 37. So we're seeing a bit of give back there. And we're also seeing a little bit of a decline in the QQQ, but it's remaining above the bull line of 40. It's currently at 44. So teetering just above right now. So the net options sentiment picture is split between bullish and bearish. And we have a lot of great stories to get into today, like Saudi Aramco announcing 34 preliminary deals with USA companies, potentially worth up to $90 billion. Some of the companies that were mentioned in these deals were NVIDIA, Exxon, Amazon, Honeywell. Obviously, President Trump was over in Saudi Arabia, so there was a lot of headlines coming out of it. So we're going to go through a lot of it today. Some stocks I want to bring up on the stream today because as the markets have rallied, we're seeing some of the favorite stocks or growth stocks amongst investors really pushing up through their all-time highs or getting close to them. So some stocks like HIMS, Palantir, and Roblox are all at or near all-time highs. So talking about those specifically now, we might go through each one. What's the story? Why were they able to recover so quickly? Where can they go from here? Then we have another stock making a major move up today. Oklo was up 20% at one point. I think I just peaked before the stream and it's up about 15% now, so a little bit lower. But looking at Oklo specifically, we covered how Sam Altman left the board for this company. So seeing them rally so much without Sam Altman has to be a good sign for Oklo shareholders. And they did get an update on the timeline of their expecting their SMR nuclear reactors. So I'll let you guys, if you didn't hear about that yet, I'll fill you in on what the timeline is looking like. Then we're going to get into the chip stocks because there's major moves happening in all areas of the market. So SMCI up big, AMD up big, NVIDIA up big, all from their lows, all announcing different stuff. We have SMCI making a great new partnership, pretty big one, so we'll go through that. AMD announcing a buyback, and NVIDIA, we obviously saw Jensen Huang and Lisa Su in Saudi Arabia with President Trump. So why are those stocks working? Will they continue to work? George was actually pretty bearish on the semiconductor stocks, so we could get an update from him on his stance on those companies. Are they looking better? And where are they going to go from here? Then we got to take a look at a stock on the very opposite end of the spectrum. I don't know if it is for sure, but this has to be close to the weakest stock in the entire stock market at the moment. The stock is UNH, United Healthcare, down just about 50% in a single month. And for a company that is, let's look at the market cap. I think it's like 250 billion or thereabouts in market cap. For it to be down that aggressively, after it has already dropped a lot, is pretty crazy. But let's look at the market cap now. 282 billion market cap company, down 50% in a month. They had another update from their CEO that dropped yesterday that caused the stock to drop more. I'm wondering at what point does this become a buying opportunity? hunting for value down there. It's like the most hated stock on the market. I'm going to ask George, is it overdone? And should it be bought now that it has dropped so much? Then we're going to look at Tesla. They dropped an Optimus video showing the robot dancing yesterday. And if you haven't seen it, I would take a peek at it right now on Twitter. It's pretty cool. The robot, I think, looks very fluid and actually like almost human-like in the way it moves. So I think part of the reason why Tesla was up today was people were excited from what they saw from that. Also, Elon Musk made comments in Riyadh about the Optimus, and nothing real new there, but he highlighted some of his thoughts on how big that potential for Tesla is going to be. So we'll go over the Elon Musk comments and the Optimus robot for Tesla. Tesla stock is now, I think, approaching, I mean, not quite there, but approaching 400. Let's see where it's at currently. Tesla, oh, no, not quite. It's at 347. So, uh, well off its lows of around 220 back in April. And you know what's interesting? There's a Twitter account called Heisenberg that posts a lot of stock market content. It's a great account on Twitter if you're interested in the stock market. And they were highlighting how, on average, over the past 5 years, Tesla has moved up 100% every May. So, for some reason, Tesla stock loves the month of May. So we have good seasonality for Tesla. So you got another 2 weeks left of May. So maybe it could keep going higher in the meantime. And then last but not least, we're going to cover Boeing stock, which inked a deal with Qatar Airways. It's a very large, I think it might even be the largest jet deal in Boeing's history. I'll give you the details on what the deal is, how much money, how many jets, and we'll talk about what it means for Boeing stock. Obviously, we covered that story recently where Trump is, I believe, still set to accept a plane from Qatar or Kuwait, one of the countries. And so it's funny that Boeing inks a major deal right after that. Hey, George, welcome to the stream today. Let's take a live look at Boeing stock to see how it's doing. I think I heard this morning that it's been up a lot in 1 month. Yeah, up 30% in a month now, just crossed $200. And Boeing's looked good in Prospero signals for a while, so we'll get into that later on in the stream. But let's take one last look at the QQQ and SPY net option sentiment before we get in here. Yes, still split around the bull line in Prospero. So the SPY right now is at 35, QQQ is at 43, and the markets are mixed. SPY and QQQ are green, Dow and Russell are red. George, we have so many updates to go through today. I feel like there was a lot of headlines since Trump and all the CEOs are over there in the Middle East. So a lot to go through there. But before we get into that, just how are you feeling about the market? We've rallied so much. I think we're officially, from the definitional standpoint, in a bull market now, up 20% off the lows. But our signals are mixed now. So maybe it's time where this bull move is going to get tested. So how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of what we were talking about Monday, where it's just like, yeah, I think there's a lot of enthusiasm and exuberance over the fact that it looks like China doesn't want to be in a trade war with us. Neither of us seem to be in an extended trade war, and that is a reason for enthusiasm. But the other side is there's a lot to be worked out still, and we still don't know how much of the existing supply chain issues are going to ultimately impact earnings, because a lot of companies didn't even issue guidance, right? So when they reinitiate guidance, we might actually see it be very different from these supply chain issues. But it's, that's what's been so difficult about this situation, right? Because it's very hard for anyone to know how much, the start and stop kind of tariff situation, the astronomically high tariffs that weren't really enforced for that long. I'm not sure how many shipments they even, affected. And then, we also don't know how many companies started to reroute their supplies to other places, what the differentiation in that is. We don't really have a window to any of that. There's not really any precedent for any of it. So that's my concern with the market, that it's a lot of exuberance for something that we don't really have a lot of details on. That's what kind of makes me nervous. And yeah, SPY net option sentiment going down is definitely something that I had my eye on today. But yeah, overall, it's an interesting situation.
Well, before we get into any more topics, I just want to highlight because Mario commented before you got in here. He's actually on a beach in Mexico right now, but he's still tuning into the live streams. How about that, George? He's so excited for our
Wow.
streams. He's
I mean, I'm glad you value this content that much, Mario.
So, like I was saying, a ton of news stories came out of Trump's trip over to the Middle East. So, first one I want to get into today was Saudi Aramco announcing that there are now 34 preliminary deals that they have made with major U.S. companies, potentially worth up to $90 billion. NVIDIA, Exxon, Amazon, Honeywell were some of the companies that were named in some of these deals. What do you make of this announcement? It seems like, for as much tension as there's been with the tariffs that have kind of maybe been the negative aspects of like a Trump presidency, maybe this is what people were waiting for on the business side where he can make deals and help out companies. So are we kind of seeing on the other side now, maybe some of the benefits to counteract and the stock market will like this type of news?
Yeah, I mean, I think more cash flowing into America um is always a good thing, right? You're never going to say that that's not good for the economy. It is. I do think kind of with the plane situation though, um that I think there's some reasons that you know things like that are not, these kind of deals didn't happen in the past. And that's because, we don't necessarily really, know what strings um, are attached to it. And that part of the world, I think, puts on a nice face with us a lot of the time. But I don't think, a lot of the people in that part of the world are all that fond of us. So I think that that's always something you have to be mindful of. But you can also like, go to the thing I said at the top, where it's just like more investment in the country is good. I just think you also, especially when that capital hasn't, moved in before, it's fair to ask why it didn't move in, and what the risks associated with it might be.
And with the tariffs, we were kind of talking about the concerns for international companies. Um, but I feel like, even when we're talking about international, it's usually like Asia and Europe. How important of a market is the Middle East to a lot of our tech companies and any company that's looking to go international? And do you think it could be like the next leg of growth if they're looking to expand their businesses worldwide?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big market. But I think it's just like where Western Europe is very similar to our culture, and then a lot of I'd say especially pockets of Asia, and like South America and Central America are becoming more westernized. Like I think the Middle East kind of stands out as a place that still has very different culture. And I point that out to say like different cultures mean different products will be adopted, right? So I think that while it is a big market, I don't think just like products necessarily are one to one in terms of being able to migrate. And I don't think it's ever really one to one, but it's closer on a migration there. But the flip side is um, a lot of investment firms, and I don't think, Saudi Aramco is any different, kind of make investments with the expectation that the money and the influence will help them. So I imagine those investments were made with an expectation that they could help expand and there could be a mutual benefit to that. So, oh, thanks, Mario. We always love to hear that. Um, I hope you enjoy, and don't just watch I hope this is the exception and you're not watching a lot of YouTube on your vacation. Um, but yeah, um, I think that that is, whereas there's the argument that, maybe there's cultural differences and maybe those products are hard to roll out. Um, I think also having, someone who knows the market well invest in you is probably a good signaling to that effect. So I think while there are, risk factors that we've discussed, I think you have to see it as both good for the companies that got the investment and good for America to have more, ways to have capital flow.
And there was many CEOs accompanying Trump on this trip. So Elon Musk, Lisa Su, Jensen Huang, and Alex Karp, I also are there. And Trump actually did kind of take a shot at Tim Cook for not being there. Would that give you pause as an Apple shareholder, just hearing that Cook could possibly be on Trump's bad side, or is that you think just a passing comment and you shouldn't make much of it?
I mean, I don't know. You never know. If there's one thing we're consistent on here, and I think this is my standing logic on the situation. You're not going to get very far trying to predict Trump. So, that being said, I could see this being a nothing burger, or I could see this also escalating where, there's call out posts of Tim Cook, or maybe, something thrown his, some executive order or something, that seems to hurt Apple. Um, yeah, I just think that uh there's there's just like a lot more similarities to Trump and a monarch than there are to, I'd say, Trump, and even Trump as the president the first time. I think the second term is just, much more similar to a monarchy. And the thing about monarchies is some of the best and worst rulers kind of came with this, more concentration of power at the top. You can you can take it either way. But that is all to say that there's traditional presidencies, it's much more distributed and you're dealing with Congress or whatever. But I think this presidency, you're much more dealing with, someone at the top that you really have to manage your relationship with. And I think that's exactly the way Trump wants it set up. So, yes, as a public company CEO, I do think just as everyone has to be mindful of their relationship with him. And I'd say the more influence you have, the more true that is. And so yeah, if you're an Apple shareholder, I do think this is a situation you have to watch.
So I want to turn to some of the companies that have been able to either approach or even cross and make new all-time highs with the bullishness in the market. So I have three written down: Hims, Palantir, and Roblox. Um, how do you feel about these companies, either specifically or just as a group? Stocks that are at all-time highs. Would you still be feeling good about them in this market? And then we can start there, and I have a follow-up for you after.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're talking about like Palantir, and even Hims, I think I don't think all-time highs should be scary. I mean, like one of our case studies that everybody loves is Meta. Um, and that's because, something that's unique about our signals is they're live with the options markets. If analysts keep raising their price targets, that's going to move up upside. And Meta stayed at 100 upside for a couple of years. And so I think that's kind of the nice thing about our signals, like where I don't think just because something has gone up that it can't continue to. Like Palantir has, a very promising business, and also an association with this administration that could mean there's, more, positive news events coming in addition to the business growing, and just the numbers looking good. Hims has a very interesting approach to their product market fit, and a lot of growth. I mean, they're basically just making, certain drugs or things a lot, drug adjacent, a lot easier to access. And, you know, that is that's a great market to expand on, especially because they're not inventing anything. All they have to do is keep saying, hey, this is something that we know a lot of people buy. We'll slap a better marketing campaign on it, and we'll start figuring out how to sell it to them. I mean, it's a great business model. So that's all to say that you know that's what I like about the Prospero signals, because I don't really have to worry about if something's at a 52-week high, if the signals are maintaining excellent momentum. I just have to worry about if I like, like I talked about, like both those companies. And as long as the signals are looking good, in addition to that, especially the trend, like that is the one caveat. If you start to see a high momentum stock, going down, normally I would say you're looking at a 10-point decline in net option sentiment before you should start getting concerned. But on like a fast mover like that, I think um, I think if you see a 5-point net option sentiment move down, you might want to get out in front of that, especially if you're seeing the price turn too with that decline. I definitely think you want to be more sensitive to that. Um, but yeah, I think it's I think that is really what's the Prospero signals were invented for. Because the thing about an overbought stock, right? And I saw this a million times. An overbought stock could just as easily see a correction from being overbought as it could go up another 100%, right? Because those stocks are likely going up for a reason. And if their business remains strong, there's no reason to believe that they could continue to go up. And that's what I don't like about the way people talk about technicals. Sometimes people talk about technicals as if they're just like overarching rules of the market, when in reality, they aren't. They're just rules that apply most of the time. And so, even something, the market goes up most of the time, right? So you could just say like, oh, well, this goes up most of the time. This is, the general pattern, right? But that doesn't really help you if the market's going down and you have to figure out how to time yourselves, right? We're having a great year, and actually we're not really making our money as the market's recovering. We're getting a little bit where we stayed pretty well hedged, but we really made our money by getting in early to the decline. And after that, and a lot of the volatility, just kind of doing good things to maintain a neutral portfolio and not take on too much risk because there were so many swings. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people that will make decisions based on 52-week highs and 52-week lows, and the RSI, and I think those can be helpful to support a thesis. But if you're orienting your thesis around that, I don't think that's best practices.
All right, so you kind of touched on, I feel like, a lot of what I was going to ask, but I'll still try to maybe come at a different perspective a little bit. So like, I feel like a lot of investors in these type of stocks call themselves like they're holding for the long term. They think they're going to hold for like years or if not a decade, and it's very easy when they're like hitting highs, but then they panic when these stocks pull back, and they are volatile. So chances are any of these three stocks are going to have a 20, 30, 40% correction again at some point. I mean, HIMS was just like 25. But the fact that these have kind of led the market and hit highs before other stocks, you should feel confident even if they drop, as long as the signals are there and nothing changes in your position, right? Like there's no need to panic. These stocks are volatile and they're going to move a lot, but as long as that you still have your conviction and the signals are there, you should look at it as an opportunity, more of a Warren Buffett type of approach versus getting nervous when they drop.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, that's why I look at the signals. If you look at price alone or technicals alone, you can drive yourself crazy. The signals are what I look for to tell me if the stock is going down. like if it's time to bail or if there looks like there might be a more structural problem in the decline, structural problem in the options markets that would indicate there's further down to go. But yeah, I mean, I think the other thing that's super important is whether or not you have like what I have, where I'm like, I look at the signals, and we always kind of say this, is just that you have a process, right? That's what is going to determine. And if you think that um there's just more growth and more like good announcements, for example, coming from Palantir, and it's inevitable, selling on the way down, you could really regret that, because there could be an announcement that turns it around really fast, and you might kind of miss the momentum back up. But uh, yeah, I think that that's really whatever it is. Like, it's fair to have a process that's also just much more much more qualitative, right? Where it's not even about anything like option sentiment or anything like, or even news, and you're just like, I think Palantir is the best company over the next 10 years, right? And if that's the case, you don't even really need to be looking at the price. But that's why the most important thing is to have a certain, approach and process, because that can govern your decisions a lot more than, just when you look at price and you're wondering what's going on. And I mean, what I always challenge people to do, even if they do have a thesis, is challenge your own assumptions too. If the stock's going down 20%, you should ask yourself, did I miss something? Right? And that shouldn't be like a creeping paranoid question where if you can't come up with the answer, you assume you missed something. That's not why you're asking the question. You're asking yourself, did I miss something? So you can maybe find something, do some research and figure out, like, if there is a rational thing that you miss that you could tie to that would cause you to reevaluate whatever process you have to evaluate if that's a good or bad choice. And I think that's really the important thing. I'm always asking that question to myself: what did I miss, or did I miss something here? And being able to do that without making yourself insecure about your positions is pretty much the key to investing. Because investing, trading, whatever, because if you have blinders on and you don't even want to look at if you're wrong or not on red days, that's how you could end up losing a lot more money.
Very well said. And the point of the process we highlight a lot, or you highlight a lot, and I think it's a great one. So hopefully everybody enjoyed that. I want to spin now to the chip sector. I feel like we're having the first real rally in the chip stocks since you began talking a little bit bearishly about the space. I just wanted to get your overall temperature on those companies now, and then I'll highlight a few company specific stories that are going around today. But just first, the overall chip sector in your mind now.
Yeah, I mean, I called chips even before the tariffs, like early in the year. I called them, radioactive, just around, potential tensions with China, and what could happen with Taiwan and all those things. So we've been pretty bearish on chips all year. Now I'd say, and part of that was like, I didn't really see as clear of a bull picture with the concerns, um, and with some kind of scary announcements around model efficiency. Um, but obviously, ultimately reducing restrictions on chip sales for Nvidia is very good. If these tensions cool a lot more, the whole trade kerfuffle cools down, there is a reason to be bullish on chips again. I mean, especially because, like, why were we bullish on chips in 2024? Because AI is expanding, and that certainly hasn't slowed down at all. So yeah, I think it's definitely time to, I'd say, carefully get back into chips. I mean, I'm convincing, like, I'm playing TQQQ now because I'm not actually trying to be too selective around that because I just think, okay, I think it's going to be a good week for tech instead of trying like, I'm pretty positive of that. Instead of really trying to guess what tech, I was just like, I saw TQQ at the top of momentum score, which I'd never seen for 2 days in a row. So I'm like, okay, this seems like a pretty clear thing to do, and it's worked out pretty well. Um, SMCI would have been a better choice, one of our old favorites. Um, but yeah, I think it's time, from calling them radioactive earlier in the year to really being, going from like radioactive in terms of like I wouldn't buy them, but I wouldn't short them. I just stay away, right? To being like now, surprisingly cautiously bullish, and it's kind of similar to how we talk about the tariff situation on the overall market, but it's more extreme. Like any flare up between the US and China, I think could potentially lose these gains in the chip sector very quickly. But all that being said, like, yeah, I think the situation is materially changed. But there is that tariff risk. There is still like, whether it's DeepSeek or another kind of leaner model, I think anything like that is going to affect the way people model the long-term revenue profitability of the chip sector. So that's why I'm cautiously bullish because I do think if there's no bad news, there's definitely room to run for a lot of these chip stocks, but they're one headline away from losing that ground very quickly.
So, like you said, SMCI moving today, they announced a $20 billion deal with a Saudi Arabian company, Datavolt. And SMCI is only like a $26 billion market cap right now, so that would seem to be pretty good for them. Obviously, the stock is up today 15%. AMD announced a $6 billion share buyback, and they had a $4 billion one in place, so 10 billion total now. Nvidia, I mean, it's now within 10% almost of all-time highs. So, just reacting to all of those stories, do you think Nvidia can make a new all-time high this year? And if it does, as we stand, it's 20% from $4 trillion market cap. Could it get there?
I mean, let's start with SMCI. It's like that is such an interesting, ongoing case study now because I think, there's obviously a lot of people shorting it. And there's bulls too. And that could just, hedge fund psyops is the term. And and that is just like the perfect thing because, we've seen tons of headlines around the accounting situation. I've even heard like the base reason to buy it is the cooling technology. I've heard people say, oh, the cooling technology isn't really that good. There's other stuff out there. Wouldn't be surprised if that was like a shorter's like planted story because then if they're making special deals with companies abroad, that does point to their cooling technology being something that's kind of unique and special. So yeah, I think it's always interesting to see how these forces play out, especially if there's people, kind of similar to the AppLovin story, when shorters get pretty heavily involved and when they kind of use the news to affect the stock price, it's always very interesting to follow because you find yourself in a situation where you can see the arguments on both sides. If they hit the papers, a lot of the times, there's good arguments to be made on both sides. And as a shareholder, it can be, or a prospective shareholder, it can be really hard to sort through. What's the real accurate story? And what is kind of pushing a certain narrative around a company. Oh, then we have AMD, which is maybe Lisa Su won't get fired after all. It's a good time for a share buyback. It's smart, right? I think if she did it when the markets were weaker, it could have been viewed as more of like a desperate measure. So the timing is really good, right? And she did, and obviously there was a super positive reaction. And that's why, timing is everything in the market, in life. I'm sure she was very happy to see this rally and was itching to make this announcement, because, yeah, I don't think it would have worked very well, with kind of a shroud over the market. But now that people are feeling more optimistic, it was viewed very positively. And yeah, it's the kind of thing that we could be looking back on, especially if the market continues to rally. I think AMD, has a lot of room to move up. I'm actually kind of curious, like where it is versus its 52-week high. I'm going to take a look.
I think probably still ways below.
Yeah, it looks like it peaked at 181.94 and has been in a pretty steady slope downward. So yeah, it definitely um it definitely is something that um, is well timed and could really, really help the stock because it's well timed. Um, what was the prompt on Nvidia? Close to
Nvidia's
the
10% from all-time highs and about 20% from 4 trillion market cap.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Nvidia is it's such a hype driven stock. I mean, you also see Tesla going up today, right? I think, hype driven stocks are going to be disproportionate. They're going to go up in a disproportionate amount in bull times, and they're going to go down in a disproportionate amount during bear times. I'm sure that a lot of people that had their money on the sidelines, I'm sure a lot of people that had their money on the sidelines sold their massive gains in Nvidia, right? And we're probably looking for the right entry point. And like that's the thing, when you get movement like this in the market, where it's just like, why I bought TQQQ, because I just I didn't see a lot of reasons that the market would be bearish. And I saw a lot of reasons that would be bullish in the short term, right? So when it's like that and people see Nvidia start going up, a lot of people start to say to themselves, this might be my only time to get Nvidia out of this price. And the more it runs, the more it kind of creates that situation. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see it cross the all-time high again in the next week or two.
So I want to spin to a very different company. UNH, United Healthcare, now down almost 50% in a single month, which for a $280 billion company, starting at a $500 billion company, pretty crazy to see the move. It's been, I feel like, the most hated stock in the market ever since the events of late last year. I mean, when is enough selling enough selling? How do you feel about this company? I think I saw it's trading at the lowest forward PE in like over a decade. The CEO just walked away. That's kind of what sent it lower the other day, recently. So, do you have any thoughts on this company and like just when enough selling is enough selling?
Well, why did they did the CEO walk away? I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't this very interesting case um that I don't know if it was filed or I just read an article, but the case is actually a class action lawsuit against UNH for their practices, denying claims, among other things, that they believe got the CEO killed, and the sewers. Is that the plaintiff? I always get that confused. The people, the class action suing people. um, it's very, very interesting because normally, I mean, things are viewed as whatever you're doing to increase the profits, like, is fine. There's almost no questions about it. So this could be a really landmark case in terms of CEOs starting to act more responsibly. Like, I don't think the CEOs adjusted their behavior very much for Brian Armstrong getting killed. But I do think if all of a sudden you can be sued for basically the results of being too greedy in your business practices. Um, I think that could absolutely alter behavior. And so it's going to be very interesting. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the CEO left because he didn't, the current one, because he didn't want to be any part of that lawsuit, right? That is going to be, that's going to be a deep look into the practices and why they made decisions. And then yeah, I mean that would really hurt. Like if that case looks serious and like the class action could win, that could really hurt the stock price on an ongoing basis. Um, so yeah, I think it's gonna be very interesting um, to see how that develops. Just because in like kind of in all my years of listening to these cases, and maybe I missed one, I've definitely never seen someone bring a case um, to talk about what a company did wrong by being too profitable. So yeah, it's kind of like maybe we've reached an inflection point in like capitalism and greed where the legal system actually says that's too much. We haven't really seen that before. And like one of my like I like to tell this story because uh in terms of the excess of capitalism, because when I heard it, um, I was really shocked and I was like, oh my God, this has been really bad for so long. So I think it was a few years ago in San Francisco, there was a bunch of SEALs that were actually like a huge percentage of them were getting cancer. Um, and they were trying to figure out what this was. And it turns out that basically, I believe it was like DDT was like barrels of it were dropped into the ocean off Los Angeles, and basically the local Los Angeles government got payoffs in some form. Well, it wasn't payoffs. I think they were legitimately paid. I think payoffs imply under the table. They took money to allow chemicals to be dumped, and I think it was like the 20s or 30s, or you can Google the story. But yeah, I always kind of like what stuck with me is uh, this slogan, because people that wanted to basically dump waste in the ocean had the slogan, and it was called dilution kills pollution. So yeah, there was a belief that the ocean could just absorb unlimited amounts of toxins, um, and that nothing would ever, it was so big, nothing would ever affect it. Um, so like I say that because it would be very interesting, because you hear that and you're just like, wow, like nobody gives a shit about anything other than making money. Like LA just basically sold the oceans to make a buck. Um, and but if we've reached a point where um capitalism and has kind of gone too far and like gotten too greedy to a point where like shareholders can actually say like this is too much, maybe rein it back a little so you don't get your CEO killed, or he doesn't get himself killed, or who knows who are all the decision makers there. um but yeah, I didn't necessarily think that we would see the line, but you know this lawsuit even is evidence that we're getting closer.
Well, we're approaching the time where we have to switch over, but I just want to quickly hit this topic because it'll make a great short. Tesla Optimus released a video of itself dancing, or Tesla released a video of it, and it looks so lifelike and fluid. It's really kind of cool the progress they've made. Are you getting excited at all for the Optimus potential yet, and how that's looks like it's making Tesla stock rally?
I mean, as a potential shareholder or someone that could, that put Tesla in our portfolio, yeah, that's exciting. I think it's a pretty nice um product that could sell a lot. Um and and I do also see kind of the negative stories about Elon Musk dying down. I think the taking a step back from Doge was a good idea. Um, so that's from a shareholder perspective. It's exciting, no doubt. From a personal perspective, I don't really like robots. Like, and I don't really think we found a solution for like the job loss that especially like a robot that can do all these tasks um will face. So it makes me nervous from that perspective. Um but from a potential shareholder or someone in our portfolio, like it's huge. It's huge for Tesla. It's a cool demo. And as that gets closer, I'm sure people are going to get more hyped. It's going to go more into models and yeah.
Jonathan's asking about Coinbase. I don't know if you want to answer it now or when you do the switch over, but
No, I'll answer here.
okay.
Coinbase is a yeah. I mean, it's a stock. I think we've seen some like I would say I'd add it today, but I think we're seeing some kind of reduction in momentum um, in crypto, and that makes me a little nervous. But I've got my eye on it. If it looks like if it looks like um, momentum's gaining back again, I could see myself adding it. But yeah, you know, it's always kind of the same thing with me in crypto. Non-transparent option markets, that always makes me nervous. Like when I get most comfortable with crypto is when I see a positive news event coming. And I don't necessarily, you know, and there you go. It got added to the S&P 500. That's good, but I got my eye on it, not really looking to make any imminent moves with it. Maybe it'll be high on momentum score and I won't be able to ignore it in the trading portfolio, but I don't think I really like it. Again, like I'm looking to TQQQ right now. That's kind of what I'm looking for my risk in this little bull run for now.
Well, we've had about 1,500 people tuning into the stream today, and we got one viewer on a beach. Looks like George left me already. Goodbye, George. He'll be joining me back from the Prospero.ai laboratory when we'll do this switches to the model portfolio. So stick around, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. Follow us on Twitter if you're watching there, or subscribe on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed the topics today. Let me take a live look at the markets overall, see if there's been any movement. Since we've been live, the QQQ is still green, but slightly lower. It is now up only 1/3%. The SPY has dipped into the red on the day. So interesting with the signals we're seeing in Prospero, how the SPY is slightly less bullish, and the fact that it's lagging on the day. So I think that's pretty cool to see that the signals might be picking some of that up. The Dow Jones and the Russell are both red as well. Let's see if there's been any changes to SPY and QQQ, net option sentiment in Prospero. Okay. All right, not much of a switch right now. I'm seeing 38 for the SPY and 45 for the QQQ. So similar levels to when we started off the stream today. We had two topics on the bubble that we couldn't get to. We ran out of time. One of them was about Oklo, which was up a lot. If you guys are interested, let me know in the comments. I'll bring it back up on Monday. The other one was Boeing striking a deal with Qatar Airways for $96 billion, which I think was the largest deal in Boeing's history. So super big deal for them. It's set to be up to 210 aircraft. So big deal for Boeing, which was interesting. Boeing was looking really good in the Prospero signals uh, over the past couple of months. Let me see where it is now, see if it's still looking good. Let's see. Not really. 51 net option sentiment for Boeing.
What's 51?
Boeing. We didn't get to a story. They made a major deal with Qatar Airways, so I was just telling everybody during the switchover.
All right. What is SPY and QQQ net option sentiment at?
SPY is 38 and QQQ is 44.
38.44. Okay.
Oh, I gotta share. Wait, 44 SP? Sorry, one more time.
SPY 38, QQQ 44.
Oh, that's down.
While other areas slowed down today, large cap growth is going strong. We have great exposure here, but we may look to target small and mid-cap bears over increasing our exposure to large cap bulls.
Okay.
Healthcare continues to slump. Glad we added one more name yesterday. Nothing looks all that different than our existing bull bear construction. So we won't target much here, other than perhaps a materials bear. I think I saw on Twitter that healthcare is underperforming the SPY at like the most ever. It's like down like 11% or something, while the SPY's up like 20% in the past year. It's really lagging.
Oh, that's crazy. All right, refresh. All right. TQQQ is still on top. 3 days in a row. Can you tell me if CACI is a win?
Is that long or short?
All along.
loss right now.
That's fine. Change that. Okay. Get out of this. All right, so I don't think we're going to change too much here. Oh, Reddit's making its first appearance on. Oops, I kept this over here. All right, TQQQ holding strong. I don't think I want this. I think we added coin yesterday, so yeah, I don't need to make too many moves. SMR, yeah, maybe. Not with. I mean, if we didn't have. What's going on with Musa? Do we have any consumer cyclical up here? Yeah, we'll grab this. Get rid of Musa. And I think I feel good about this. I'll get this too. All right, that works. That was an odd error message. All right, done. Okay, that's done. Now we will just take a look at this. Been kind of wanting to get out of Olga. No, still looking too strong to make that move. Might just be a pretty simple day. Hmm. 44. I kind of want to look at. I kind of want to add one of these communications companies in Reddit. Although I'm really over concentrating on the large caps, but large caps are doing well. We'll see how I feel about it. United States Cellular. Oh, it's looking like a pretty good short. How about IRDM? Less good. All right. We are doing at USM. Wow, it was up 11% today. Does anyone know why Reddit was up 11%?
I do not know. Let me see if I can find.
Yeah, I'm out on this plan. I'm just going to keep what I'm doing. I mean, I kind of want to add. No, I want to add USM short, but I don't. I got plenty of upside. Okay, done. All right. Any questions?
No questions, but Mario said, good stuff you are sharing. Last shout out to Mario. Thanks for tuning in from the beach. Enjoy your vacay, Mario.
Yeah, it's raining here.
Yeah.
I'm
Raining
jealous.
and kind of chilly.
All right.
See everybody Monday. Thanks for coming, guys. Monday, 11 a.m.